Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Adam Matthews, and we are all this month in our practice. We are putting out resources around parenting, and particularly finding the joy in parenting, because we know how difficult and challenging that can be. So joining me today is Kim Daley. She's one of our awesome LMFTAs. She sees couples and and individuals, and she works with parents as well. So we're just excited to have her on. She's also a mom, and so she is one of the perfect people to speak to this idea. And today we're talking about finding the joy in the early childhood years. And Kim, you have a couple of children, right, that fall within that range. Remind me, how old are they?
Yes, I have a son who is 2.5, and then I have a bonus son who's 6.
Oh, wonderful. And I have, I'm fortunately out of the early childhood years. My last one is 7. So he's kind of, we're slowly progressing out of that. So we're going to talk about that. And I know how difficult the early childhood years can be. And Kim, I know you do as well. In particular, let's talk about first, just like what in general is really difficult about those early childhood years.
I think that what I have found just in talking to other parents and just experiencing it myself, the hardest part about those early childhood years is the fact that you're parenting your children, but you're also parenting yourself or reparenting yourself.
Yes.
You're having to, take care of yourself. You're acknowledging and becoming aware of, your triggers and some of your hurts and where some nourishment will be beneficial for you. And so you're tending to yourself, and you're also tending to this brand new human being who is so reliant on you and dependent on you to learn all of these things and learn about this world. And so I have found in my own experience and through talking to other parents that's, one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, for sure. I love the way that you put that, because I think that's what's happening in a lot of ways, right? Because we are going through that parenting phase where we're also what happened to us during that time of our lives, how our parents were, is coming in. And so we are in a lot of ways trying to be different than our parents and trying to be the same, and the things that we loved, we're trying to do the same type of things. And that, I feel like that builds in, I don't know if you found this, but I feel like that builds in a lot of expectation for how those years should go when you have these little ones that they're not babies anymore. And so they're starting to enter into that, their personalities are starting to come out, their wants, their needs, they're vocalizing their wants and needs, and their complaints, right? And so all of that is happening all at the same time, but there's a lot of, I think, expectations that go into that, particularly that period of time. Have you found that to be true?
Absolutely. And I feel like those expectations come from so many different ends. It's, what are those internal expectations? What do I expect of myself? What does my partner expect of me? What is my child expecting? What does society say I should be doing and how I should be responding to my child? So family and friends, right? So all of these expectations are built based off of who we're surrounding ourselves with and our own experiences. And so there's a lot of information coming in. There are a lot of, demands, and, it's hard to kind of filter through what's beneficial and figure out what works for you and your family and your child.
Absolutely. And one of the things you mentioned in your blog post is that some of those expectations come from people that are giving advice, right, on telling you have to enjoy this season, right, which can be so hard when it's such a demanding season with kids when they're kind of in these early childhood years. How do you feel like that? And because I think we've all heard that, right? I know I did. You mentioned the blog post that you did. What does that do to us? How does that affect us when there's this idea that we're supposed to enjoy this time, right? Enjoy this season, and it's so hard, right? Like we're battling a lot of things. What do you feel like that does to parents?
Yes. So I can definitely speak from my personal experience with that. For me, it brought in a lot of guilt and a lot of shame that oh my goodness, everyone is saying that this is the best time, this is the best season. And I feel like I'm finding it very challenging. And it's hard. It's really difficult to navigate and challenging to navigate. And I would find myself like really cycling in my mind, like, why is this not as enjoyable as everyone is saying it should be? And if this is how I'm feeling now, like, is it only going to get worse? It just kind of makes you feel like I don't really know what to expect. And so that can definitely add in those feelings of guilt, those feelings of shame. And I think that it can also turn our perspective or shift our focus to being away from the whole point of parenthood, which is connection with your child, right? It can take us away so into, I've got to do this one certain way and it has to look one certain way, versus really connecting with your child and establishing that happy, healthy, safe relationship and being able to move in a way that is natural for y'all based off of that connection.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there, because to me, that also means it takes you out of the present moment, right? Which is how we kind of start to establish like any kind of connection. And because you've got all of this other stuff that's kind of going on in your head of trying to, like you said, move into that particular way. Because I think what the expectation is, we're going to find our joy in this particular way, right? If everything goes in this way that I expect it to go and I want it to go, that's how things are going to be joyful. That's how we're going to be happy as a family. That's how my child's going to be happy. That's how I'm going to be happy. And I think it sets us up, right? It sets us up to for this really challenging time. I think we miss it, right? We're not present in the moment, and doing what we need to do to be able to connect with our kids, right? So you mentioned a few things in the blog post that I think are really helpful. Let's just talk about maybe your top things that you feel like, if we can start to do this as parents, we can find more enjoyment in those early childhood years.
Definitely, yes. So I think that one of the biggest things that was most helpful for me was this idea of like okaying my feelings and okaying my child's feelings. I think that so often we have intentionally, unintentionally been kind of taught to shove our feelings down, don't feel it, stop crying, like stop acting like that, right? Versus acknowledging, hey, I'm feeling really uncomfortable right now. What do I need to help myself feel safe in this situation? And so part of that reparenting and nourishing yourself through parenting is stopping for a moment and saying, okay, my young one is throwing themselves on the floor, rolling around in the middle of this grocery store. And I feel very judged by people around me. I'm feeling out of control. I'm feeling really anxious. I'm feeling embarrassed, right? Acknowledging those feelings. It's okay for me to feel this way, right? It is okay for me to have these feelings based on this experience that I'm having. And what do I need to help myself feel better so that I can tend to what's happening in front of me? Right? And then also being able to okay my child's feelings. They're not giving me a hard time, they're having a hard time. So how can I help them through this hard time that they're having? Are they hungry? Do they need a snack? Do they need a nap? Is it close to their nap time, right? So what is happening for them in this moment? What's happening for me in this moment? Okaying both of those and meeting that root need. So maybe I just need to take a deep breath. Maybe I need a little bit of a snack myself, and tending to that, and then nourishing those needs and being able to move forward. But first, being able to acknowledge and okay what I'm feeling and what they're feeling, and knowing that we're not against each other in this moment. We're just both going through something. And how do we nourish ourselves so that we can, all right, let's go to the next thing.
I love that so much. And I love that idea of okaying my feelings, right? Turning okay into a little verb or adverb there. Like that idea of saying like, my feelings are okay. The hard, difficult feelings are okay. My kids' hard feelings are okay. And keeping that in mind, I think, because like, it gets to that other thing that you said that I just love is my child is not giving me a hard time. They're having a hard time. That's a mantra I'm going to write down, and I'm putting it on a sticky note and keep that, because that is just so great, and kind of a reframe, a refocus to allow myself. Because I think you're right. Like it sometimes we go, I shouldn't be embarrassed of my kid right now, right? Or I shouldn't be as frustrated as I am. which is just going to come out in all kinds of weird ways. But okay, in that feeling allows me to kind of shift and go, okay, they're having a hard time. They're not giving me a hard time. They're having a hard time, and we can kind of move on from that. I love that so much. Another tip, another thing that you feel like can help kind of shift us in that more of a direction to enjoying our children.
Yes, definitely. So I think something that gets a little bit, dicey when it comes to parenting is when we kind of use our voice to acknowledge the good in our child, right? When we use our voice to call out the things that, they're doing really, really well, and to, praise them in the midst of other people and, various situations. I think that for, I will be totally honest in this. There's sometimes where I just want to slip under the radar. My bonus son is at that age where he is questioning everything, where he's curious about everything, where he's asking lots of questions. And sometimes it can feel like, okay, you're questioning me. And then I had to step back and say, no, he's not. He's just a curious 6-year-old who has questions. Let's answer the question. And so sometimes we have that tendency as parents to want to kind of, all right, my child is quiet. Let me just stay quiet and kind of be under the radar so they don't detect the movement. But I've noticed that being more vocal when I see that my children are doing something well, or that they are moving in a positive and healthy way, calling that out and really allowing them to have that moment of feeling good and feeling seen, feeling acknowledged is super, super powerful for them. And it allows them those moments to experience like us as giving them some sort of affirmation and, a form of praise that like, hey, I see you and you're doing a great job. Like, I love the colors that you chose on that painting, or you're so talented in that. Like, I love watching you dance. You're such a great dancer, or, all of these different things, or y'all are playing so nicely together. I think so often we just tend to want it. They're quiet. Let me just not disturb the quiet. Let me just get under the radar. If I give them attention, they'll want more attention. I hear that. It's very real. It's an incredibly real experience. And just as often as we want to be validated and feel like people are acknowledging our efforts and the strides that we're making and the progress that we're trying to make in our own lives, our children want the same thing. They want to be seen as good and to be acknowledged as well. So giving them that and having that moment of connection can be really, really powerful.
I love that as well. And I think you mentioned something that's really powerful on the blog, of that is oftentimes we move away from that validation and we just move into correction. And when it's only correction rather than, and we're not, and the validation isn't there, I think it's even true. Like, this is that when we talk with our couples, it's like you got to have at least 5 positives for every negative thing, right? Or every complaint, you have to have 5 affirmations for every complaint. And I think it's true for children as well. And it's probably even higher than that. And so if we're going to lean into sometimes we just lean into the correcting side of parenting. And I think the point you're making is so good, is that validation has to be really high. We have to really step into those moments whenever we see them, because it's going to make those corrections that we have to do much more powerful and more intentional, I think, when we do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So last tip before we go, I know you have more you're going to have more on the blog, but last one you want to just kind of leave people with here. What do you think you would be one to just kind of leave everybody with today?
Yes. So I think the biggest one is that that piece of empathy, right? Being able to step into your child's shoes and really see life from their perspective. So often we filter how we see our children through our adult lens, and that leads us to maybe seeing things differently, right? Because we're not stepping into their shoes, we're not understanding where they are and what they're experiencing in that moment. So really being able to get down on that level physically and mentally and really understand, like, okay, what is really happening for them, right? And asking them those questions, right? So what is it that you're needing right now? Or what frustrated you? Or at what point did you get frustrated? I'm noticing that you seem really frustrated. What's frustrating you, right? And really being able to identify what is the need that my child is having right now, or what is the moment that they feel maybe things became unfair, or they're not getting what they're wanting in this moment. What is it that they're wanting? Is there another way that they could have that thing, right? or a different time and place. And so I think that, stepping out of our adult lens, stepping out of our adult way of seeing the world, and really connecting to our child's perspective can help us to really see where they are and help lead them and help them identify what they're needing, so that they can really identify that for themselves and communicate to us what they're needing, and being able to connect in that way, right? Just the same as we would with our spouse.
Yeah.
If you're talking to your spouse or your partner or even your boss, right? And you feel like every time you talk to them, they're just like, yep, sounds great, but this is what you need to do. Wait, can we acknowledge what I just said? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just honest with you. I was just vulnerable with you. I'm sharing what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And those feelings are being totally dismissed, and you're just kind of moving on to what you want me to do. Like that doesn't feel good for us as adults, right? And so taking that same mentality of like, I would want to be heard and understood in this situation. So how can I hear and understand my child so that we can get somewhere?
I love that. I love that so much. And I think that's such a great point to leave everybody with today, because that idea of empathy, I do agree that our adult lens keeps us, we don't remember what it was like for it to be kids, to be that age. We just don't. We look back on it and we put our adult expectations and our adult understandings onto it. And so I do think that keeps us from empathy, which is key in connection in any relationship, but particularly with kids, I think, because if we don't have that empathy for what they're going through, even if it feels so far out of bounds for us, or we don't understand why in the world they are making these leaps, like that empathy and getting into their shoes and at least asking and trying to understand, I think just goes such a long way. Kim, thank you so much for chatting with me today about this. I think it's so helpful for parents to start to kind of have these kind of considerations. And we just want to acknowledge, like, parenting is hard. It is difficult. Every kid is different. Every kid is unique, and it is that you can't really compare it across. You can't compare kids. You can't compare parenting. Like, it's really, really hard. Every kid is unique, and so we just want to encourage you that if you're struggling with parenting, like, that is normal. That is, if you're struggling in your relationship with your kid, that is normal. At the same time, we want to be here to help. And so we have therapists like Kim and other therapists that could see you to help you work through parenting issues, but also talk to your kids as well. And we would love to support you on your parenting journey. Kim, any last thoughts? Any last thing you want everybody to know about?
I think the biggest thing is, again, just going back to, yourself and your journey in parenting is, again, to just trust yourself and know that you are enough as a parent. And it's a journey, it's a process, but it's one that, it's full of potential and possibility, and just making sure that you are giving yourself that grace and trusting yourself on the journey.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kim. I appreciate it. And everybody out there, thank you so much. If you need support, you need help in any way, we have therapists that have immediate openings for both in-person and telehealth sessions at our office in Cary and our new office in Durham as well. Feel free to reach out by phone, 919-587-8018, or you can request an appointment online at matthewscounseling.net. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.